This is a ManeHustle Media Podcast. Welcome to Militantly Mixed, the Black as Fuck edition, the podcast about blackness from the mixed black perspective, because we're mixed, but we're black. I am one of your hosts, Sharmane, aka MixedGirlMane, and I'm running solo tonight because we typically record, BlerdVision and I typically record on Tuesdays for the following Tuesday's episode. But last week, I was at the De La Soul, Dave Chappelle, Lauryn Hill 20th anniversary of the Miss Education of Lauryn Hill concert at the Hollywood Bowl, which took place right at the time that BlerdVision and I normally record. Both of our families have set aside Tuesday evenings for he and I to record together, and we just couldn't get it together for the rest of the week. If he was available, I wasn't. If I was available, he wasn't. And so here we are at the day our show was supposed to air and we didn't have anything. I was going to fill the time a little bit to sort of just talk from a solo perspective, but then it occurred to me that we haven't, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't discussed the sort of origin story of BlerdVision and I wanting to work together on a podcast about mixedness or Mixed-Blackness. But we did record an episode like that for the other show, Militantly Mixed, the flagship show, I guess, if you want to call it that, for ManeHustle Media. So if you only listen to Black as Fuck edition and not the other show, Militantly Mixed was something that he and I wanted to do together and had been talking about it for a really long time. But when it was finally possible for me to start doing it, it wasn't possible for him to start doing it. And I literally had nothing else going on but that. So that's why I started Militantly Mixed. And that's why the show is the way that it is, sort of a discussion show between myself and another mixed race person about their mixed race experience and identity and everything like that. Sometimes we get into issues, but everything is kind of through the lens of that person's individual experience and then, by extension, mine if I share some of my stuff. But I didn't want to start that show without BlerdVision because we had been talking about it so much. So the very first episode of Militantly Mixed is actually called the 0 episode. That was BlerdVision and I getting together to talk about how we know each other. We've known each other since fourth grade, and how, what are the nature of our friendship is, why we talk about being mixed black so much, blah, blah, blah. So we actually did record that for Militantly Mixed, and that was the 0 episode, which was the first episode that aired for the show, before we got into the numbered shows 1 through, now we're popping up on episode 13. So it occurred to me that we hadn't really covered that on this show. So if you're coming to us blind and you didn't listen to Militantly Mixed first, you wouldn't know probably why we are buddies, why we talk about mixedness and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to do today. I do apologize that we missed recording last week, although I don't necessarily regret it because I got a chance to see De La Soul perform again with the surprise guest of Talib Kweli came on the stage, and I was probably the very first person to scream in all of those 20,000 people because I'm a huge Talib Kweli fan. So when he walked out on stage with De La Soul, that was a big surprise I was super excited about. And De La Soul is my number one. I have been a devoted fan of them since they came out. I actually remember the first time I saw Me, Myself, and I video pop up on MTV when I was a kid, and thinking how weird it was that these black dudes were rapping, but there was all these neon colors and stuff like that. Like I remember being hooked on them from the jump. And I've seen them a couple times in concert, but I haven't seen them in years. And they still, even 31 years later, they're still putting on a badass show. Talib is just amazing performer. I'm a huge fan of him. He's also someone I follow on Twitter, and he retweeted me. the other day because I was excited about getting the chance to see him by surprise. The Dave Chappelle show was awesome. The Lauryn Hill show did take an hour and 15 minutes between Dave and her, so it was really long, quote unquote intermission, but it was really just that she was late, which I know she's got the reputation for. Honestly, people might be mad at me for saying it. I could have left after Dave and had been perfectly happy with the money I spent and the experience. That hour and a 15-minute wait sucked, and I didn't particularly feel like it paid off once Lauryn got on the stage. I feel bad kind of saying that. I mean, I love that album, and she still sings beautifully, like everything. It was still a great show. The problem for me, there was two problems for me. One, they had a lot of different arrangements on some of the songs, and probably to keep it fresh because she's been singing the same songs for 20 years, or maybe it was just something special for the show. But for me, like, I like the old arrangements, and I wanted to be able to sing along, and it was kind of hard to do that with some of the ways that they arranged the older songs. And then the other part, and I don't think 40 is old. I like being older, though, I will say that, and I can't wait until I get to be an old-ass curmudgeon. As an old person, I can't wait to be an old person. I might be the only person in the world that's like this, but I don't feel old. But I felt old as fuck at that show because throughout the whole De La Soul, Michael Che, Dave Chappelle part, you couldn't have your phones because Dave, any show he does, he makes you lock up your phones. So you didn't have access to your phones. So you couldn't record anything, you couldn't play on it, nothing. But during the intermission part, you could go unlock your phone and you could have your phone once Lauryn got on stage. And these people that surrounded us where we were sitting, and all throughout the audience, were recording the show on their phones and watching the performance through looking up at their phone. Instead of looking down at the woman that was on stage below us fucking performing, they were, removed from the experience because they were looking at it through their phones. And I was just sitting there like, God, why didn't they keep those phones locked up the whole time? Because then you could actually enjoy the fucking show. But everybody wants to be able to post on Instagram and Twitter, whatever the fuck. So they were like missing that person, that actual physical person in front of you experience. And then also the woman that sat next to me, she would record a song, and then when Lauryn would finish a song, she would play back that song. So she just fucking watched the recording while, she just watched her phone while recording it. And then in between, when Lauryn would either talk to the audience or there would be a video that played between the songs, this woman was playing the video she just recorded. And so you couldn't hear what was going on stage because I had to sit there and listen to this woman playing back what I already heard. So it just kind of fucked with my experience, I guess. Maybe I'm being shallow or petty or just old as fuck, but it was annoying. I just wanted to sit there and enjoy the show, and I had to sit there and look at it through all these people who had their phones up blocking my actual view of the show, and that was kind of irritating. But whatever. It was still a great night. I do apologize that it made me shirk my responsibility to BlerdVision and to the show to not get to record. So yeah, before I turn it over to the 0 episode, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms. On Twitter, we are MMBlackAF, and on Instagram and Facebook, we are Militantly Mixed Black AF. You can also hit us up on email, blackaf@militantlymixed.com. And if you want to hit us with a comment, or you want to throw a topic, a conversation that BlerdVision and I can have, you want to be included on the show in some way, shape, or form, leave us a message on 323-545-6001. That is actually the phone number for all of the ManeHustle Media shows. So if there's anything you want to comment on for Militantly Mixed, the Black as Fuck edition, or Black Radical Queer, we also have another show coming down the pipeline pretty shortly called The First Time I Ever, which is a podcast about first time experiences doing anything. First time you rode a bike, first time you got on a plane, first time you crashed a car. You can hit us with your stories there on 323-545-6001. Let us know what you're thinking. Also, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, because that does help us with visibility, so we can keep the show going. And if you would like to sponsor our show to also help keep us going and growing, you can go to patreon.com/militantlymixed or paypal.me/militantlymixed. On Patreon, you can sponsor us on a monthly basis for as low as $1 to as high as whatever you wish. There's different reward levels depending on what your contribution is. And if you want to hit us with a one-time only donation, you can hit us at paypal.me/militantlymixed. So I think that's it. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and cross over to the 0 episode from Militantly Mixed, where BlerdVision and I talk about why we're buddies. All right, and we'll hit you back next week with another show with both BlerdVision and I, and that's it. And this is kind of the 0 episode. It's a chance for me to bring on someone I've known for a big portion of my life, my friend BlerdVision. We kind of grew up together a little bit. We're both mixed kids and military brats. So I'm going to let you talk about yourself a little bit, and then we can get into it.
What's up, girl? Yeah, this your boy, BlerdVision.
Original BlerdVision, because there is a cosplayer, and he has reached out trying to get the name, but they're just going to have to split it.
I can't give it up. You know what I mean? I was the first. So I should just say OG BlerdVision. But we've known each other for a very long time. Grew up in Sacramento, California. Mm-hmm. Mother is Italian. Father is black. We have that shared mixedness. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's all love. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So with I'm just going to call you Blerd. Blerd, we met 4th grade, and his mother she watched my brother and I. So we'd go over there after school every day, and they were the first family I wasn't related to that had 2 different colored parents, just like I did. And I remember feeling at home right away, and it took until I was an adult to realize, it was probably because you had a black dad and a whitish mom,
right?
Too.
You know, it's weird how you say that, because I never really even, just growing up in Sacramento, it's kind of diverse, and especially where we were with the military families, it's a lot of people do have mixed race mother and father, or father that is one and mother that is other. So it's good to know that I helped with you feeling that myself. Not my parents, but I was able to help.
Yeah. I think it was just like a weird sense of like, my cousins and I look like you guys. And, because actually you and your full brothers all sort of have different skin tones and everything like that. I remember your youngest brother being kind of a lot darker than you guys. And I was like, you guys are just like me and my brothers, different colors from each other. My cousins and I are different colors from each other. So, yeah, it did. I only thought about it kind of recently. I was like, I can't think of any other family or any other people that I knew that were like us until I met you guys.
That's cool.
That, and your mom is just one of those loving people, which I guess the last time I saw her was high school graduation. And before that, not since I was hanging out at her house as a little kid, because I moved between Long Beach and Sacramento. But I just remember your mom being a source of like she's just a comforting, loving type of woman. So I always had a fondness and memories about her too.
Yeah, she still actually does watch kids as of right now. I mean,
does she still?
She's always that mothering patriarch, or I should say matriarch. That people went to. I mean, she's raised a lot of children in that area.
Has.
So it's a good thing when you go home and people know you, and you're like, I don't know who you are, but he's like, your mom raised me, and I was this, So it's pretty cool.
That's funny. Because I hadn't seen her. So we left Sacramento when I was kind of in between 5th and 6th grade, and then I didn't come back to Sacramento until I was it was a 10th grade that I came back. Mm-hmm. and then I saw your mom at our high school graduation, and I walked up to her knowing that I hadn't seen her. I was like, hi, I don't know if you remember me, and she just pulled me in and gave me a big old hug, and she's like, oh please, shut up.
Yeah.
like of course I remember you.
Once you're one of her children, you're one of her children,
right?
You know what I mean? So
it was
that's how she is.
But so we go pretty far back, and we hadn't talked to each other in a really long time. And I don't remember how we reconnected, but I think I was in either Austin or Boston by that time. And you and I started talking about mixed race stuff. We were just like, we don't know what we want to do, a documentary, a screenplay, a book. Like we've talked about so many things over the years, and we've even talked about this podcast for a while. And it's really just been a case of like, if you were available, I was working that crazy ass job. And if I'm available, you know, you've got your family and all the other stuff that you got going on too. So we haven't been able to really get it together, but that's why I'm glad that we're finally sitting here talking and doing this podcast. Let's get into kind of the stuff that we've been talking about for fucking our whole lives together.
Let's do it. Let's get to it. Yeah, no.
So you're a person who, the difference between you and I is that people look at you and they see a black guy. It doesn't, like, you're light skinned, but it doesn't necessarily translate, and you're big and muscular and everything like that, so it doesn't translate into, oh, that's a half white guy.
No. I've never got that. Hey, are you half white? No, I mean, maybe in a joke, you know, somebody's like, oh, but he's half white. So, it's weird how people, and I guess you're pointing it out, is that, I mean, people do know. They look at me and they kind of say, you know, hey, these are the things that they mark off in the box that say, hey, that guy has to be part black. You know what I mean? He has blackness. So, you know, but, you know, a lot of times, you know, people do say, well, you got white features and you got and I'm like, I don't need you to point out the things that aren't my blackness. Just I am me, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's kind of, you know, when people do look at me, they do know that I have, that I am black. So, which is kind of different for you, because I know when they look at you, they kind of get a furrowed brow, and they're kind of like, not understanding what box do I put you in? What do I, yes. Yeah, what can I, in my own mind, make this all understandable? You know what I mean? So, yeah. So like, it's funny because for me, in terms of all the things I'm mixed with, and I did mention it in the promo, but for those of you that may not have caught it, my father was black and Caucasian British. His mother was from England. His father was an American GI. That's how that marriage happened. And on my mom's side, she's half Japanese, and the other mix is like a German, Irish, West Virginian, Appalachian, who knows what they are, kind of folk. And same thing, Japanese war bride era. And so I grew up knowing I was super mixed and not knowing who the fuck I belonged to, but black people always made me feel normal. So I do sort of identify more as black, even though I'm sort of yellowish, tannish, and my face shows my black features, but my skin color throws people off. And so someone wants to go, oh, on the West Coast in particular, oh, you're Filipino or Mexican, especially when I had curly hair when we were kids. Remember, I used to perm my hair and stuff. And then and I stacked my bangs. I did the whole thing. I was from Long Beach. What are you going to do? You just threw yourself under the bus. I mean, I don't care. I was like, I had the crunchy curly hair going. But when I'm on the East Coast, people think I'm Dominican or Puerto Rican. And that to me makes more sense because I am, you know, lighter brown, yellowy skin tone, but I have black features. So it makes sense to me that people want to try to go there. I don't get why people want to go Mexican or Filipino, because I don't see those. I don't see anything that resembles that. Like if I stood side by side with a full-blooded Mexican person, no one's going to confuse, or I would think no one would confuse, but how often I get spoke Spanish to by, you know, anybody, it's kind of crazy to me. So yeah, like I identify as mixed black or black and Japanese, Blackanese, and then the white part is just sort of like this thing that I am that I have no connection to. Like you at least had your white parent. I didn't have white people in my family except for my British grandmother. She wasn't like Americans, you know? Right. Yeah, I mean, growing up, you know, my mom was from Sacramento, so my white family was there. My grandfather I should say, once I came, he was on board. You know what I mean? Like once, you know, he didn't really kind of, you know, jive with, you know, my mom and dad. But then once I came, then it was like, okay, it is what it is. He's a little pale. It's not too bad. Right. You know what I mean? So I like a little curly hair. But yeah, so I was able to connect with the white side, but also, you know, my dad always, you know, helped keep my blackness and whatnot. And so I and like you said, though, because I was able to be put in those easy fittable boxes, not not like yourself, I was able to just go to, okay, I can get blackness from here and whiteness from here and still,
Did you ever feel like you wished people would assume you were white?
Not at all. It's
right?
weird because I don't think I
don't get it either.
I don't mean to sound like that, but I have never thought, like, I've always been very thankful. I know that there's issues that we have to deal with, and I know that there's, absolutely. But I've always been very thankful for being black.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Same.
I've never been, and I guess sometimes, when something goes my way or whatever, or somebody sees me and you can kind of see what they're doing in their own mind, and they kind of give me a little something because they can see that, or I'm with my white mom or something like that. Okay, yeah, I get that. But I've never been like, whew, I'm glad I'm part white. You know what I mean? I've never had that feeling out there. Because I guess because people do put me in that box, I guess it's never been a part where I had to go and be like, or kind of deny one part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The way I put it is like, I'll never be accused of being white, even though technically I'm half white. Like, if you add it up, both of my parents are biracial. Both of them were half white. I am half white. Because the only white relative I ever knew was my British grandmother. I mean, I met my Caucasian grandfather, my mom's dad. He was around when I was a baby, and then my family, they separated, and I probably saw him maybe 5 times where I'm like aware of who he is and stuff. Up until I was 12, I never saw him again. I mean, and honestly, he could still be in Sacramento and I wouldn't know. Like, I have no clue what happened to him. So, like, white people, the only white people I was around was the times that I did live in Sacramento whenever I wasn't in Long Beach. And they were all, just like you, a part of either a mixed race family from the military base or, like, our high school was kind of weird. It was actually pretty white, but we seemed to know a lot of people like us. Like, it was a pretty diverse school, but it was still like we could flip through those books and see mostly white faces.
Right. It's weird because Sacramento, like, when I look back, I think Sacramento does have a lot of diversity. I know there are, obviously there are white pockets of, Rio Linda, and there are, going up towards the mountains. But I think where we grew up, because of the military, we did have a lot of people that were mixed with a lot of different things coming in and out, that kind of kept us grounded. And our school it wasn't really like, I can't say like progressive in a sense, but we did have where we were all kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't the jocks and the rockers and the drama people and what I mean? Like,
we were pretty blended. That's true. Yeah.
So, I mean, we kind of had a whole unit, really.
And the kind of friends, so we also ran in a very similar circle too. I mean, not just because we had grown up together, but all of the people you and I grew up with ended up being our friends in high school too, for the most part.
Right.
And so, like, that transition into us getting older, the only kind of things that really probably drove us apart in those relationships was whether or not we were fucking somebody's boyfriend or girlfriend. The kind of shit that goes down in high school. I mean, I don't remember, like, I remember a couple of times where we referred to it as like the annual race fight or whatever that kind of happened like at the beginning of the year, but it was never anything like what I dealt with in Long Beach or anything like that. We literally had maybe 30 white people at our high school in Long Beach, so the Mexicans sat on one side of the school, the black kids sat on the other side of the school, the white kids were in the parking lot. There wasn't many of them. So we didn't really come up. That kind of stuff didn't happen very often. But I didn't feel like I never got the sense that we had a lot of racial conflict.
Yeah, I mean, there were things here and there. But I mean, like, my 3 best friends, one was black and Japanese. One was English, but his mom was married to a black man. And then the other was
pretty much
mixed,
my whole situation right there.
Yeah. So, it's exactly. That's your family. And I mean, I even failed to mention that my dad's first marriage was to a Japanese woman. So my brother, my oldest brother, is half black and half Japanese. Right. So when I see him and you, I see that. So I can put you in a box because I know what he looks like. You know what I mean? So
so I call that like smell our own kind, because even if we're not quite mixed the same, we kind of can see each other right away. So like, I see another mixed person walking down the street, and I'm just like, sending that eye contact or that vibe to be like, I got it. I'm like,
isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that you just know it?
it feels so good though sometimes, because like I had this weekend I was at this event at the JANM, the Japanese American National Museum in LA, and it was about the Japanese, you know, quotation war bride era, and there was a couple segments that were the black Japanese people, and there's three fairly prominent black and Japanese professors and authors that were there, and from across the way someone kind of points to this guy and introduces him. He's like, she said, oh, Sharmane kind of wanted to meet you, and he looked at me and you could see the recognition. I was like, yeah, I'm a black and Japanese too, and I don't know any of us, and he gave me the Wakanda Forever salute, and I did it back, and it was like the most visible I never felt in my whole life. Like, oh my gosh, another black and Japanese saw me and was like, yeah, we're the same, Wakanda Forever. And even though we don't have a spot in Wakanda because they're, you know, they didn't make the mixed folks there, it still was like that weird feeling of, oh my, there's people that are like me out there. I forgot that your older sibling was black and Japanese. And so you also have like 3 white siblings too from... I do from my mom's first marriage, I remember your sister and I remember all 3 of them.
Yeah. So so I have the super mixed. I mean, my mom was married to a white man, her first marriage. So I have a sister and 2 brothers. They're full white.
Your sister was gone by the time I was hanging out there, but your brothers were still around. I remember. Yeah. And then the black and Japanese one came around more on the weekends and stuff. But you didn't have 2 other siblings on your dad's side? I could have swore you guys were 3, 3, and 3. Did I have that wrong?
No, we have 3 at the 3 whites. The 3 whites. And the 3 whites. Then the Mish, and then so
I don't think I ever saw your black and Japanese brother.
No,
I don't think I ever did.
I went to house all the time, and so it was cool too, like to see a different culture growing up, you know, with him being there. So
it was always, you know, like I said, it was always a nice place to go because it was a place where I wasn't related, but people looked like me, so I wasn't the weird one. I think that was what was so cool about growing up out there.
Cool.
Okay, I just have a little offshoot. This has nothing to do with being mixed or anything like that. But do you remember that you and I had a dance-off
before they were dance-offs? I think we invented it. I don't know.
We were at the community center. What was that little place on the base house?
The youth center.
The youth center, right?
The youth center,
and we went to one of those dance nights or whatever, and I don't remember what, but I think you and I weren't happy with each other for some reason, and so like we decided to settle it on the dance floor, and the DJ there, like, do you remember
brown
this?
People should. You know what I mean? We should be doing it only on the dance floor. You know what I mean?
I just had this memory the other day because I remember that Shake Your Thing from Salt and Pepper came on, and I was like, okay, it's time for dance off.
Let's go. Let's get it down right now. Yeah. You know, that youth center was pretty cool. That we had, like, you know, when we were in like 5th and 6th grade, we had dances. You know what I mean? So
and we had the soda machines where we could mix all the flavors and stuff like that. That was a good spot because I didn't have anything like that in Long Beach. Long Beach, I was straight on the border of Compton and North Long Beach. I went to Jordan High School, so if there are any listeners from Long Beach, I was there in '92. I walked to school, and a prostitute used to be up in the morning, and she would pet our hair as we walked to school and tell us to make good decisions. Like that's how, and then she ended up getting murdered, and so later on we ended up walking past where she was murdered the day the cops were there collecting her body and stuff like that. So like that was my Long Beach experience, and then I go back to Sacramento as a teenager at 15 years old, and all of a sudden I was weird at our high school. I was like the new old girl because everybody knew me from when we were kids, but I was different because I was from Long Beach now. I had a ghetto-ass accent. It took me like 2-3 years to drop that accent, and that was like my aunt staying up with me in the middle of the night, like trying to get me to count to 10 instead of count to 10. I remember she was really working on my accent because I sounded really, really hood at the time. And I remember getting in a fight with, so you and I share a dude that was a redheaded black dude, right? You remember him? I don't want to drop anybody's names if they're not on the show. And he came up to me one time and was like, you don't know what it's like, Sharmane. You don't know what it's like to be black. And I was like, nigga, I'm from Long Beach. Like, you live in Antelope. You need to calm the fuck down.
You're right.
But I guess
you don't know.
You don't know what it's like. I mean, I appreciate the dude's anger because it's not easy to be a redheaded black dude. But
right.
But yeah, like we used to go back and forth about that kind of stuff. I used to hate when people would think I wasn't. That was part of my mixed journey, which I think, I don't know if you have quite as much as I do, but the not being seen as black means I got to overperform my blackness in some spaces. When I was younger, I don't do that shit anymore. But when I was younger, I used to like have to overperform my blackness just to be like, no, I'm like legitimate black person. You have to let me be, let me present or represent as I want to, or something like that. So I definitely had that problem. I didn't have that problem in Long Beach at all. I was black in Long Beach, and it was fucking brilliant. Like I felt normal. I'd never felt weird. I mean, they would make jokes if I said something goofy. They'd be like, "Oh, don't worry, that's just your white side," So like it was always a part of a joke. The whiteness was always part of a joke. And like you said, I never sat there wishing I was white. I knew that I benefited from a privilege without understanding it as a privilege.
Right.
Because like
that I understand. Yes.
Yeah. Like my light skin got me out of situations that if I were darker, I would have been in, worse position. Like me and my friends sitting in the park and cops pick us up and say we're loitering. They go drop my black friends off in the Mexican neighborhood so they get the shit kicked out of them. And then I get dropped off at home and my black dad opens the door and now the cops are like regretting their decision. Because they saw was this little like light girl. They didn't know what I was, but I didn't look black enough for them. And since my hair is straight like Asian hair, it was easier to be like, oh, she must just be like this little Asian kids or something like that. And they took me home, and then my black dad opens the door. So like I understood in that moment that there was something there. I didn't understand it as a privilege until way later in life, but it was also one of those things like I didn't want to benefit from. Not that I wanted the shit kicked out of me in a Mexican neighborhood like my friends, but I just wanted to. It was this thing of like I had a lot of anger, like especially as a teenager. I was always fucking angry that I wasn't black enough for non-black people to see it. I always felt black enough for black people. So
it is what it.
Did you go through an 8th grade patch about being mixed at all ever?
Not really. I went through where, you kind of do want to get to belong to one. You kind of want to belong because
sometimes,
on one end, you don't belong to one, but you're just enough. And on the other side, you're just enough to not belong to there.
I know, right?
And so you kind of you're in the middle and you connect to both, but you're not both. You're not either. So it's kind of one of those, it's weird, but I never had I guess that never was my reason for anger or any resentment or anything like that. I never like looked at my parents and resented anything from them. I was kind of like, and I guess because of where we grew up, I kind of had a different situation.
Yeah. So I do remember being mad that my dad wasn't darker, especially because his dad was so dark. And then I'm like, you couldn't have given me a little bit more melanin. Like I had to sit there and be this. But at the same time, if I wasn't the color that I would have never known my Japanese family because that was so my parents were 15 and 17 when they had me. So that was already bad enough. But then on top of it, my Japanese and white side find out that my father was black, and that was 70s. That was a whole nother thing. And so my mom was kicked out of the family at first. And I think the only reason why I came back into the family was because my youngest aunt wanted to see me, and she was 13. So my grandma had to drive her over to see me. And then she told my grandma like, oh no, she's yellow. She's not brown. And, because of that, I was back in my family was sort of reunited through that. And to this day, like my Japanese grandma is my favorite person in my family, and I love her, but she definitely still, she doesn't know black people, and she didn't have black people in Japan. So if a black person would come up to me in front of her and say like, you're black, right? She'd be like, why did they ask? Can everybody tell? Like, no, Japanese people can't tell. It's just black people. And I remember one time in particular that really messed her up was my mom is really popular in Sacramento because she's a hairstylist and she does black hair. So black people just like you, black people would come up to me randomly and be like, oh, you're daughter, and so one time I was eating with my grandmother, and this dude, God, I don't remember his name, he just came and sat down with me at a restaurant, like me and my grandma at a fast food restaurant, and he's like, you're right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, You black? Yeah. Yeah, and then he gets up and walks away. And so it was already a weird moment, like in terms of like an interaction. My grandma was like, one, what happened? Why did that dude sit down with us? And two, what was that conversation? And so I was just like, he knows mom. He just wanted to make sure I was, part black or whatever. It freaked her out.
Yeah, and I mean, she didn't realize and it was a deeper level too, deeper level conversation there. Yeah. With just those words.
Yeah, like we didn't have to go anywhere else. And it happens to me randomly, like go into a building and a security guard will be like, hey, little sis, this way. And I don't say anything, and they don't even get so far as to hear my name. Like, I think if you're questioning what I am, once you hear my name, then you're at a confirmation. like I got a ghetto-ass name, like Sharmane Latrice Franklin is not an accident. Oddly enough, my mom was the one who named me that, though, not my dad. My mom was the one who gave me that name. But see, I'm not cool with nicknames that I don't grant to somebody. I get real bent out of shape when someone calls me Char.
Oh, I would too.
Because one, look at me. I'm not a blonde hair Stepford wife from Connecticut. You're not gonna get away calling me Char. Now, I say that knowing that there are now a couple of famous black women that go by the name Char. I don't understand it, but okay, whatever is your thing, it's not my thing. So you either call me Sharmane because that was my whole name, or if we're close enough and you're going to call me a nickname, it's going to be Mane or Maney. I attach more to that side of my name, I guess, in terms like, I just can't go, I can't go there. And then my whole life, I've always turned something into something Mane, to like, if I'm upset, I'm Grumpy Mane. If I'm sleepy, I'm Sleepy Mane. And then now I've actually created my company, ManeHustle Media, because it's a play on words, but I'm using my name at the same time, So Mane has always been, and you've called me Mane. I think you were one of the first people early on that called me Mane.
Right, because I just was like, because I say it that way, but then whenever I would talk to you, I'd be like, "What's up, man?" Because it just would go with it, Right, so. And because when I was, everybody wanted it to be Char something, and so I would have this like rant all the time. It was like, Charmy or Char or whatever, and like I can't stand it, and it's one of those things where I lose my mind when someone does it, and especially with white people though. And I think that just has to do with a lot of the baggage that I have as a mixed kid that's not ever going to be seen as white, even though it makes up, percentage wise, it is the most of me. If I'm in a job interview or like I have a white boss and they're just like, I'm just going to call you Char. And I'm like, no, you're not, because that's not my name. My name's Sharmane. It's not hard. It's 2 syllables. We'll never be close enough for you to call me Char, because there's no person on this planet who can call me Char. And I'll be like, okay, nah, it can't be my husband. It can't be anybody. Like, I'm not going to go for it. Just because I don't feel like it makes sense for my face. I feel you.
Char. One thing that I don't know if you get as often as I do is, do you get the "Where are you from?" question?
No, I think they do. I think they essentially know what I am just because of, I don't know if it's my voice, the way I carry myself, because I don't carry myself any different than anybody else, I don't think. But I think that there are some mannerisms, there are some things that, that I do like my dad. But a lot of people, because I've heard that before, but a lot of people just, they assume that. And I may be a little bit, being half Italian and half black, I think I am a little bit louder than other folks. So I think that they kind of assume that as well because of my stature or my larger than life personality, I've been told. Right. So yeah, I mean, I it's been, I guess, since they can easily see that. I think I know, and I get that you probably do get that more than I do just because of the way that I look. But I know I look forward in a sense, not look forward as in like with anticipation, but I look forward in the lives of my daughters.
I can't wait to see how your daughters are gonna. Yeah. Right.
Because I mean, with my wife being full Mexican, but she's super, looks like a white woman with dark, and she's full Mexican. But with my daughters, my first daughter is as dark as I am, curly hair, dark, looks just like me. My second daughter, blonde, she's dark. She's dark eyed. I mean, I guess she has kind of like hazel eyes, but so we call them, beans and rice, because one is dark, one is, beans and rice. But they'll probably get that, because I mean, sometimes people will call them and just to me like, same father, or where's she from, or is issue. You know what I mean? So I can see that they're gonna have to deal with that, and I think that like us having discussions like this is gonna help me when they do see that, and if they can't deal with it, having a person that or even having an experience to point to and be like, this is how you can deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, especially with your youngest daughter, I think it'll be interesting because standing next to you looks like you. Standing next to your wife looks like your wife. I think definitely in the lower part of her face, she favors her mother for sure and everything like that. But I can imagine that she's probably going to get the most attention because when you guys all four together, she looks the most different with the blonde hair. Yeah. Really does stand out. I wonder how they'll deal with two being sisters of two different colors as they go through school at the same time. I imagine their experience will be really different because has anybody ever asked your mom, because or when you guys were younger, if you guys were the same father? Oh, she gets it all the time, like that? All the time. But also because the boyfriend that she's had throughout since her and my dad had broken up, he's light skinned black with like green eyes or whatever, and he's got one dark skinned daughter and one sort of medium skin toned son, and then me and my brother look different too, and they're siblings and we're siblings, and all four of us standing next to each other, they look at her and they're like, well, one, either she's had babies with four different dads, or two, some of these kids don't belong to her. The other part is that my brother and I are 5 years apart almost. So, and this is a part of racism that is just like one of those subtle racist things. They're like, well, okay, I know that your daughter is part black. They're 5 years apart. You must have different dads. You must have. Because Dad didn't, he wasn't going to stay around for that. He wasn't going to stay around. I mean, to have another child. Yeah. So we get that. She would get that a lot of the time. Some of the things that she never got, or at least that I'm not aware of, she never got asked if we were hers though. Because they just knew. They just probably assumed. With my mom, even now with my wife, they think she's her mom. I can see that. But she's always loved being out with us, with my brothers and such, and just be like, hey, I'm there. You know what I mean? If anybody said anything, she wants to get in them. Like, look, no, these are my sons. You know what I mean? Yeah. So. They came from me. That's funny. We can go ahead and kind of wrap it up. I want to see how you feel about just kind of maybe from time to time I tell you a little bit about the interviews that I have and we kind of talk a little bit about them, or if you ever want to jump in on them too, because I feel like this isn't it's not quite 100% mine, because you and I have talked about doing this or something like this for so long. Yeah. And but no, I love talking about it. It needs to be talked about, especially right now. So we can get into it deep. Militantly Mixed, the Black as Fuck edition is a ManeHustle Media Podcast, produced and edited by Sharmane Johnson, co-hosted by MixedGirlMane and BlerdVision. Music is provided by Hwoodplayers and Pond 5. If you like what you heard on Militantly Mixed, the Black as Fuck edition, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us on social media on Twitter at MMBlackAF and Instagram at Militantly Mixed Black AF. And if you want to sponsor the podcast, please go to www.patreon.com/militantlymixed. Peace, y'all. This is a ManeHustle Media Podcast.